Hello and welcome to the final session of the meeting show. I have the pleasure of chatting to Andy King today. He is the co-founder and creative director of sustainable events company Inward Point. Andy has spent the last 30 years organising events, but it's not his reputation as a respected event producer that propelled him to stardom. It's his connection to the infamous Fyre festival that made him a household name. But I'll let you see for yourselves.
All these models, like in the Bahamas. The most insane festival the world has ever seen.
Island getaway turned disaster.
It became very barbaric.
Right now, we are the fucking laughing stock of everything.
Just wait until you see what you're getting yourselves into.
American rapper Ja Rule is in the Bahamas with his business partner,
Billy McFarlane.
Is an amazing entrepreneur.
He can convince anyone of pretty much anything.
They just bought an island. Pablo Escobar's island. Oh my gosh.
Ding! We're gonna throw a festival, yeah.
Within 48 hours, they sold out. These guys are either completely full of shit or they're the smartest guys in the room. We were working around the clock, no sleep.
Billy's like, bring more workers. We need more workers.
Every single day it got more intense.
He just would not take no for an answer. And he just kept pulling money in somehow.
Desperate people do desperate things.
He was lying to investors and making it seem like we were making a ton of money when we weren't.
I mean, that's fraud.
We need to get the messaging out now that this is not a luxury music festival.
Oh my God.
There's mattresses all over the place getting soaked.
The save yourself mode kicked in.
All right, it's a free-for-all.
It became this looting mentality.
There's an angry mob, they're pissed off and they want their money.
Powerful models built this festival, and then one picture of cheese on toast ripped down the festival.
They just couldn't physically fit that many people on the island.
The event's co-founder is facing up to 20 years in prison.
If you had thousands of dollars to go on a trip to see Blink 182, that's on you. That is Darwinism at its finest.
The biggest event in a decade, I promise you.
I'll be there.
Without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Andy King to the meeting show. Andy, hello and welcome.
Holly, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be enjoying some time with you and this great audience, and sorry to not be there in person, but hey, looks like we're rocking the virtual world right now, which is great.
Andy, you're undeniably a very successful event producer, but the notoriety that you have gained came after the Netflix documentary aired. I mean, what has life been like for you since? Can you walk down the street anymore without being recognized?
Well, it's a little crazy, and you can imagine, Holly, after a 30-year career of many, many, many successful events, knock on wood, to be known now for one event, the failed Fyre Festival, is crazy. And it is. It's like, it's not what I ever dreamed of. And yeah, it's a little bit difficult. I mean, I can't go to a restaurant. I can't stand on the side of the street. I can't go through an airport without someone going, oh my God, it's him, it's Andy King. And I'll think, and I give a little bit of a wave. Was it my dream to be known as like the blowjob king of the world? No, I probably would have preferred to be known as one of the best event planners. But you know what? Any PR is good PR these days. And it's actually given me an amazing platform.
That's what they say. That's what they say. So in terms of what have you been up to since the Netflix documentary aired?
Oh my word. So the documentary aired in last January, and it was a wild year of traveling around the world and doing speaking engagements, which is pretty cool. I was the keynote speaker at Big Sound, which is the largest music festival conference in the world in Brisbane, Australia. We were focusing on zero waste and actually the drug problems that take place in the festival industry. And I did a big keynote speech in Las Vegas, which is pretty cool, with a big marketing group. And I've been traveling everywhere trying to spread a little love and tell the story. And my goal really from from the release of the documentary was to try to create a couple vehicles, which were GoFundMe's, to help pay back everybody in the Bahamas the best way I could. And I feel like I did a pretty successful job driving money to those GoFundMe's with my crazy year of traveling.
Were you able to pay them back, the festival workers?
Well, it's difficult to know exactly how much we owed everybody, because you can imagine the laborers, the average laborer in the Bahamas doesn't have a bank account and barely even has an address. And so there wasn't a formal system of like time cards. They'd come in the morning and they'd get paid cash at the end of the day. You guys probably saw, we set up a GoFundMe for Marianne, who was that wonderful woman that runs Exuma Point, supplied all the food for us to feed our staff of, a few hundred every day for weeks and weeks, and then feed the first set of 600 kids when they arrived for the festival that first day. And we owed her approximately $125,000. And I think we finally raised, she was able to raise $250,000. So that was pretty good. And I think she was helping to disseminate some of that money also to some of the laborers. And then we set up a second GoFundMe specifically for laborers in the Bahamas, which we raised another 100,000 or something like that. So I think we came pretty close to being able to pay back everybody the best we could. And I'm really proud of that.
And it's a nod of respect, isn't it, to say we haven't forgotten about you. Thank you for your hard work.
Well, exactly. And I think that was vitally important for me to be able to do that. And then you may have all seen, I hosted this virtual music festival this past May called Room Service. And I partnered with Trap Nation and Chill Nation. And gosh, speaking of the UK, wow, we had over 100 performers that participated in the festival. It was wild. Speaking of funny and virtual, we literally, it was supposed to be live streamed, wink, and a lot of the musical performances were, but for me as the host, we had to shoot 44 videos and put them in the can and make it look like it was all live. And my manager said, "Oh, Andy, I think it'd be cool if you changed your outfit for every damn little shoot that we did," which I did. And that was great until during the 3-day festival, every time I'd say, they'd say, "Hi, it's Andy King, and I'm out in my garden, and I'm so glad everybody's enjoying this great music festival, and we're raising money." We raise money for Sweet Relief, the music charity, and for Feeding Hunger. And all of a sudden, you'd see my video pop up, and I'd look at my partner and I'd go, "What was I wearing?" And he'd say, "Oh, you were wearing shorts and a blue shirt." And I'd run upstairs and put on the shorts and the blue shirt, and I'd come back down and then do a shout out for the musician. And then 10 minutes later, "Oh, hi, it's Andy King, and I'm cooking a recipe in my kitchen." I'm like, "Oh my God, what was I wearing?" And he said, "You had that, that sweater on and the jeans." And I'd run upstairs, find the sweater and jeans. So it was hysterical for a few days. But I was really pleased from a virtual perspective. And we had Clean Bandit, and we had Matoma. We had some amazing DJs, and Fairlane from Germany, and Oliver House from Holland, and a lot of European music artists that performed. And we raised a couple $100,000 for the charities. So it was kind of fun that I was able to, I feel like, fulfill my commitment to the Bahamas and start moving on to other charities that I could help support.
Giving back to an industry, especially at the moment where it's an industry that is, struggling a little bit.
Well, it's amazing. One quick side note, I had an hour call with Billie Eilish's travel team. And, it's really difficult for all these big musicians. There's no large concerts, there's no tours, there's nothing. And how do you keep supporting this big group of employees when there's nothing happening right now? And so I've been on a few Zoom calls building morale and talking to them about, the future of tomorrow and the new world of COVID. But yeah, it's definitely challenging times right now in the event world.
And remaining positive, that's a full-time job in itself at the moment, but it's wonderful to talk to you today with all of your stories. I just want to take it back to the beginning of Fyre Festival and your involvement. So what happened? Billy just called you one day and said, "Andy, we need you down here"?
I was producing a large event at the World Cup Pro-Am Ski Championships in Squaw Valley, California. And it was a big fundraiser for Riverkeeper, which is Bobby Kennedy's charity, where we're trying to help clean up all the rivers around the world. And opposite of any usual problem with a large ski event, we had too much snow. Usually you don't have enough. We had too much. And so there was snow everywhere, and we couldn't remove it quick enough. And there was nowhere for people to park. And we had 150,000 people coming to attend. And oh my word. And the phone rings in the middle of this snowy mess, and it's Billy. And I was on the board of Billy's original company called Magnesius, which was a black credit card company for 20-somethings. And we were trying to help build a community for these young kids that were moving to New York and other major cities, where they were working so hard they didn't have time to meet other people their age and enjoy all the arts and cool things that these cities had to offer. And so this card would help them develop discounts and preferential treatment and also meet a lot of other kids. And so I hosted over 40 events for Billy prior to the call. And he said, Andy, I'm in need. Can you get to the Bahamas? I'm hosting a music festival and I need your help. And I said, okay, sure. Well, cue number one should have been he sent a private jet to pick me up in California, which God only knows how much that cost to get to the Bahamas. And then I got to the Bahamas, and the whole team was just wide-eyed. And they're like, Andy, please just tell us your first thoughts. And so I toured the venue, I toured the island, I did everything. And they said, can we pull this off? It's only 6 weeks. And I said, well, we can pull it off, but we need to change the messaging. We have to tell people that they're staying in tents and that they'll be eating grilled food on the beach, and they'll be in their bathing suits, and they're going to have this amazing stage and this incredible island and beautiful crystal clear water, but enough tequila and rosé to sink the Titanic. They will have a great time, but they need to know that they're not staying in luxury condominiums and beautiful big yachts. Though we had a few of those, but sadly, Holly, you know the story, obviously. The messaging went out 11 hours before the first guests arrived. And I kept working with Billy every day. And he said, don't worry, we're working on a new campaign. And sadly, we would have lost 10% of the attendees, and it would have gone fine. But no, 11 hours before the true message finally went out. So it was challenging, to say the least, right?
So when did you realize, I mean, what was it when you stepped off the plane from California? Did you think this can really go ahead? There must have been an inkling thinking, this isn't going to work.
Well, Holly, it's funny, you know, and I've touched on it before, and maybe even in the documentary. I'm one of 9 children, and I have 2 older brothers who went to Woodstock. And so what my empowerment was through this entire production process was that if Woodstock could go down in history as one of the most successful music festivals in the world, excuse me, then I think Fyre can make it. No one talked about the thousands of cars piled up on the New York State Thruway. No one talked about the lack of water and the lack of food, and no one talked about mud and drug overdoses. They just talked about this amazing music festival. So I kept thinking, jeepers, what Woodstock went through, I think Fyre can make it. And that was kind of my mantra through the whole thing, as I ran meeting after meeting after meeting, and people kept saying, are you going to pull the plug? Are you and Billy going to pull the plug? And I said, I think we can keep pushing through, but we know the ending.
So for our viewers, Billy McFarlane is the entrepreneur behind Fyre Festival, and ultimately the guy that came off as the villain. You'd worked with Billy before. Would you say that he was would you say he's a hard person to say no to?
You know, yeah, Billy has a strong power of persuasion. And I used to call Billy a serial entrepreneur. We might add the word sociopath to that now, but I didn't say that out loud. But that he has the ability, and as you could see, to talk people into almost anything. I mean, the kid at 20-something years old with very little experience and having never have hosted a music festival raised over $25 million, which was incredible. And so, you know, and the fact that I sort of know Billy's family, and we're both from neighboring towns, and so there was a web there of you know what was empowering me to help Billy. But yep, Billy is pretty amazing with his sense of persuasion, and he can get people to do a lot of different things for him, that's for sure.
Sounds like he was very creative with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, working with difficult clients, have you got any advice that you could share with our audience about setting client boundaries and managing client expectations?
Wow, you know, and that's it's an interesting topic, Holly, because the event world, as everybody knows, is hard and it's challenging, and we're only as good, excuse me, as the people we surround ourselves with, right? It's the vendors, it's all of our you know, rental companies, to AV companies, the production companies, the art groups, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not easy, you know, to be depending on all these different people. The business is stressful. I recently read that there's like 3 of the most stressful industries, and one is being an SAS or whatever, an EMT. You know, one is like a fireman, and the other is an event planner. I mean, we are firemen, right? We're constantly putting out fires. There's so many components that we need to control with these large events, and it's really difficult, and you just have to be as organized as possible. My message really to the event community is that we have to remind ourselves that we are the experts, and we are. Think about it. Like I've been doing this for 30 years, and we have this little challenge these days with a younger generation who's like, well, I just YouTubed that. I'm like, oh, you can YouTube all you want, but I have been doing this for 30 years. Trust me, what you're suggesting we do is not going to work. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't, you know, I'm like, oh my word, really? So I say to our world in the event professional arena, sometimes, A, you need to say to your client, you hired me because I'm an expert. And 2, you might have to fire a client every once in a while. I probably should have fired Billy, right? 3 weeks, I had 6 weeks to build a music festival, really, with no infrastructure, no plumbing, no electricity, barely a venue, no accommodations, no housing. I mean, honestly, you know, that was stupidity in my mind. But because I grew up going to that island as a child with my family on vacations, I felt like I could pull together the infrastructure that I would need to make it work. But in the end, I couldn't, as we all know. And that you might just have to say to your client, you know what? You're not listening. I'm the professional here. It's not only your reputation, it's my brand reputation too. And I'm going to let you, if you want to continue your event, go ahead. But I'm out of here. Unfortunately, we're, you know, I don't care what the contract reads, but you are going in a completely wrong direction that we can't help you with. And I think we need to empower ourselves as event professionals to fire a client every once in a while. And that really, I think, will help to set a parameter where, wow, oh, okay, no, we respect you, Andy. We understand you have the experience. I think we need to start doing that. That's kind of my message, Holly, to the event world.
Listen to the expert.
Listen, yep.
And on that topic, we both know that sustainability is a huge issue in the events industry at the moment, and it's something that the events community and event planners are trying to become, let's say, experts on, and they're trying to get their head around, and they're trying to fix the sustainability issue within the events industry. Ironically, your events company, Inward Point, is founded on the principle of sustainability, but you are now known as the Evian water bottle guy for trying to get the Evian water bottles through customs in the Bahamas. What was it that sparked your interest initially in setting up a sustainable events company? And how do you think that the industry can step up to the climate change?
Oh boy, all right. So let's see. As an event planner, and my original success and business was built on Wall Street events. So I know all of you saw The Wolf of Wall Street, my dear friend Leo. And I was the guy behind the scenes. I was one of the guys creating all these amazing parties for Wall Street all through the 90s and into the 2000s. And 90s and 2000s. And talking about waste, oh my word. But the money was there and I wasn't focusing on it as much. I'll give you one quick story. I had a client, a large investment banking firm, and they were going public on the stock exchange. And I had just been profiled on the front page of the Wall Street Journal as America's first corporate concierge. And that's a concept I developed and I launched at PepsiCo at their world headquarters. And I was helping corporate employees balance their work lives and personal lives so that they could be more productive at work and happier at home because they had someone doing their to-do list. Oh my gosh, we need a babysitter, we need a nanny, we need a plumber. We had the services to help source all those things for employees so that they could focus on their job. And when they got home, they could have fun and enjoy their families more or have a personal life. The chairman of a large investment banking firm read about me on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. One of the things that I was doing at Pepsi was also hosting events. And so they'd say, gosh, Andy, we have 100 Japanese executives coming to New York in 2 weeks, and we don't know where to begin. I'm like, don't worry. I found an abandoned loft in the meatpacking district, and I got Jean-Georges to come and sign his cookbooks and be the chef. And then I had second row seats for all the guests at the Elton John concert, and there was champagne waiting on the luxury coaches to take everybody there. I mean, I gained power because of my ability to get into all these organizations, having this base of all these employees that needed things to do. And I could bring business to all these different arts organizations and restaurants and museums, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the chairman of this investment banking firm called and said, will you host our big celebration for the stock exchange party? And I said, sure, what's your budget? Now keep in mind, I think this is 1993. My most expensive party then had been about $250,000. And so the chairman said, well, our budget's about $1,500,000. And of course I went, oh, and I didn't even know how to respond. And so I just said, do you have any flexibility? And he said, well, sure, if you come up with some interesting concepts, we'd probably spend another $1 million. Oh my gosh, let me tell you, I bought my first 50-foot sailboat with a commission from that one party alone. But the waste, oh my gosh, Holly. So the wife of the chairman of the company called me 10 days before the event, or 8 days, and said, oh, Andy, what are you doing next Tuesday? And I'm like, well, I've got a lot on my plate planning this large event. But that large event turned into 4 events, and it was a breakfast for 1,500 people on Wall Street, and it was a huge dinner at the Museum of Natural History, and then it was this big on and on. So the chairman's wife said, well, I have reserved a 747, and it'll be waiting for you on the tarmac at John F. Kennedy Airport. And I said, oh, well, where am I going? And she said, well, you're going to Amsterdam because I just bought 200,000 orange tulips. And I want you to recreate the kitchen gardens all along the East River of Manhattan around the Water Club where we're hosting our big party. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Talking about waste. I flew over there by myself in a 747. I picked up the tulips. We brought them back. I got every floral designer in New York to help recreate the kitchen gardens. And the tulips were dead in 3 days. Now, obviously, I support a lot of greenhouses and great young people who are growing wonderful plants, and we create these rock gardens that are centerpieces on every table, and they'll last for 3 months. That was the kind of waste that took place. And about 10 years ago, I had a turning point, and it was one of the first big climate marches in the world, and it took place in New York City. And millions of people flew in from all around the world to help support climate change. And Beyonce performed in Central Park, and I assisted in this big production. And as I walked around Central Park the day after the concert, Holly, you would have died. There were just thousands and thousands of plastic water bottles and plastic cups and plastic plates and silverware, plastic cutlery, all over the ground. And these people didn't give a shit. They'd flown in from all around the world to help support climate change, and they left garbage everywhere. And I said, from then on, I will never have plastic at any of my events unless it's compostable. And it was a big turning point for me, and believe me, during that transition, it was difficult. Like my clients were like, what are you doing now? I said, well, we're running a zero waste event. They're like, no, Andy, we don't like all this hocus pocus stuff you're doing. Like, we just want the events the way we always had them. And I've said, there's nothing hocus pocus about knowing your supply chains. Like, yeah, I feature farmers that are within a 50-mile radius of every event that I do. And we create farm stands, and we have farmers that are showing all their produce, and the farmers stand behind all the buffet stations, and they partner with a chef, and we use the farm's ingredients in your dinner that night. and people can go up to the farmer and ask questions. It's not that difficult, right? There's so many components that we do now. And I think the big question people say to me, Holly, now is like, wow, I'm a new firm, or I'm just getting into the sustainability piece. What is the first thing you would do? And the first thing I do is I say, eliminate plastic at your events. It's a baby step, right? But hey, look at me with my wonderful, love my brand, Blue Water, my wonderful water bottles. And, you know, all my employees, when they come to work on a big project, there is a station you arrive on at the venue or on site, and it says, please remove, you know, no plastic on site, and everybody gets a water bottle with their name on it. And I tell you what, like, it's an amazing thing to do. And then there are coffee stations with coffee refilling, with cups, and they're baby steps, Holly, but it's what the industry needs to be doing for sure.
So you say the first thing you recommend at your event is eliminate plastics. Do you think it is the event producer's responsibility to guide the client and say to the client, we have to make this event more sustainable? Is it their responsibility?
I think so. But it's also nice to try to find, you know, like-minded clients that think the way we think. But also our job is to, you know, it's interesting. I sat with Pepsi, and we began a dialogue about me helping to host the halftime show for the Super Bowl last year. And it was funny because I said, well, you know, I probably wouldn't, you know, their head of marketing, Todd, said, Andy, would you consider hosting that? And I said, you know, no. I said, why? And I said, because it's so wasteful. And he said, oh, I said, you know, as the biggest sponsor of the largest sporting event in the world, your job is to influence people and to help them make better decisions. And I said, the Super Bowl should be zero waste, and I'd love to help you do that. And ironically, they came back to me, and we worked for a month on creating a whole program on recycling. And unfortunately, there were a lot of blips and things, and we weren't able to implement the program, but I'm praying. And now this year, Super Bowl will probably be virtual, so I don't think there'll be a lot of people there, but maybe it'll buy us more time. But yes, just starting with eliminating plastic, I think, is really, really important. But we need to be able to influence our big clients. Now, take, for instance, one of the original performers, Jack Johnson. And Jack was amazing. And he started sending out a rider to any big, you know, performance venue saying, you want me to perform at your venue? Here's what I need. No plastic. Everything's compostable. I want you to support women and minority-run companies, blah, 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 blah. It was amazing. And I think more performers now are developing riders that are doing that as well. So if everybody in the industry gets together and just starts saying, for your next big event, and I say, okay, fine, let me ask you some questions. How many trucks do you have? Oh, we have 109 trucks. How many of those are electric? Well, 3. How many are biodiesel? 2. How many regular diesel? 14. Okay, listen, if you guys can start really embracing the sustainability piece of your business a little bit more and focusing on how can you shrink your carbon about it. So I've been able to influence a lot of companies now, catering companies, hotel chains, you know, talking about their supply chain. Where do you get your food? Don't you want to know where your food comes from, right? Where do you, you know, collectively, can you imagine if we can make the event world as close to zero waste as possible? It would be amazing because we are the biggest waste creators in the world, these huge, large events.
Do you think that is achievable, as close to zero waste as possible?
Well, probably not in my lifetime, but I think we can continue to take baby steps and get there, you know, if everybody understands. I just try to, you know, we never want to use the word educate when I'm hosting an event, but I want to inspire guests. So when you arrive at one of my large events and I'm partnering with someone like Ocean, and they make these wonderful bracelets out of plastic water bottles, and suddenly there's a huge Ocean activation when you walk into the festival or the large event, and it's a famous artist creating incredible sculptures out of plastic water bottles, sponsored by Ocean. And then we're partnering with a local fishing family who has a raw bar, and you know, and they're passing out clams and shrimp and ceviche and what have you, and they're partnering with a chef that is fully sustainable and is trying to support all the local fishermen. And then we have a liquor brand like Tito's is very, very sustainable. And that's in one activation where people are like, wow, okay, maybe, geez, look at this. Maybe I should be supporting local fishermen more. Why aren't I going down to the fishing docks, and why am I always going to the supermarket? Oh, and look, plastic water bottles. Look at the mess they're making. Maybe I should buy a water bottle, right? And oh my gosh, maybe I should support a brand like Tito's who's really embracing the world of sustainability. So I'm trying in our business now to get people to create more and more activations at large events that are cool, that offer great food and fun liquor and highlight amazing artists, but also send a message to like support your local farmer, stop buying plastic water bottles, support big brands that are fighting climate change. That should be the messaging.
So like you just said, not re-educating, but guiding and reimagining, and that this is the way that we can go forward with sustainability. Yeah. So we could argue that sustainability is a trend that the events industry has seen pick up over recent years, and people are taking it incredibly seriously now. Another trend, and whether you look at this positively or not, is social media. And Andy, this is relevant to you because social media not only started Fyre Festival with the influencers posting across social media to say you need to come to this exclusive event, but you could also argue that it was the downfall of Fyre Festival when the viral photo of the cheese sandwich went everywhere online. Can you just explain a little bit what actually happened there, and whether you think what opportunities social media has within the events industry?
Holly, you know the amount of nightmares I've had about that, I'm just going to say it, that fucking cheese sandwich. Oh my God, let me tell you. Here's the irony, and you touched on it. So Fyre Festival, and now it's become a Harvard case study, you know, I mean, people are really studying this, that it was a social media phenomenon, right? I mean, the orange tile, getting all these influencers and models and famous people to post all at the same time. The festival, sold out in 48 hours, and we had a waiting list of thousands of people that wanted to buy tickets because of that social media launch. It was amazing the way it went off. And then the irony of ironies, obviously. Here's what happens. So, of course, we have 600 guests that were lucky enough or unlucky enough to get onto jets to go from Miami to the Bahamas, where we stopped all the rest of the jets because we knew we couldn't take any more kids. As you know, we'd had a massive storm, 48 hours or 36 hours, maybe 24 hours before the guests arrived, that came through the Bahamas, that basically wiped out half the village and blew over the tents and soaked the beds and you name it. I mean, it couldn't have, if you could, well, you know, it sounds like a movie. Well, it was a movie, right? I mean, a bad movie. But that all the kids had to go. We funneled them to Marianne's resort for the day, where we were buying time to try to prepare the village to rebuild it again so that we could house these 600 kids and pull off some sort of a festival. And all these kids wanted to do was see this darn village. And so by 5 or 6 o'clock, you know, everybody's at the gates trying to get in, and the buses are lining up, and we finally just said, okay, come on in. So the guests started coming in, and you saw in the documentary, I mean, you know, Billy made some crucial mistake and welcomed everybody and stood up on a table, and he was so nervous, he just said, go find your own tents. Now, we already had logistically a whole plan of where people were sleeping, and Holly was coming with 4 friends, and she needed 2 twin beds and a queen, and I mean, everything was pretty well laid out. Oh, no. It was a shit show, or Fyre, obviously, and I mean, people are throwing mattresses out of tents, and so the biggest challenge, Holly, was these kids had been drinking all day, and so they were bombed, and kids started to arrive, and I was standing there, and we had a huge tent that was the big cook tent with all the chefs in it, and we had a small tent for the employee cooking area, and that was to feed all the employees breakfast, lunch, and dinner as we were building the festival and running it. And so I glance over, there's 2 kids, a boy and a girl, probably a boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're just staggering along and slurring their words, and I said, oh my gosh, you guys, you need to eat something. And they said, oh, please, I said, listen, the main cook tent isn't open, but the employee cook tent is right over there. And if you walk over, Max is one of the chefs, just say, Andy sent us, and he said you'd make us a sandwich. And they said, oh my God, thanks so much. And there they were, just completely bombed. And all of a sudden, a minute later, 2 more kids walk up again. And I'm like, oh my word. And one girl looked like she was going to throw up. And I said, listen, you guys need to eat something. So I said, go over there. Max is the chef. He's making sandwiches for employees, but he'll make you a sandwich. Something occurred, which was happening at Fyre every 2 minutes, and some big problem. And I got, pulled away for 10 minutes. I glance over, Holly, and in 10 minutes, there's 600 kids in line for this fucking cheese sandwich. And I'm like, oh no, it's not happening. Oh yeah. And what came out? The little phones. And people just started photographing them in the styrofoam container. I'm like, no one's talking about the shrimp and the meat and the chicken and the mahi-mahi that's being prepared for the dinner for these kids that's coming out in 3 hours. Everybody was focusing on this cheese sandwich. And that is what brought Fyre down, as you know. That cheese sandwich went viral in minutes. And I mean, Holly, we had many of the acts, the musical acts, were all 10 minutes away by plane in Nassau, staying at resorts and waiting to fly over. And the cheese sandwich went viral and hit the internet around the world. All the managers and acts just started to cancel left and right, saying, this is just not, it's a scam, which it was not a scam, and that this is obviously not happening. And there it is, the power of the cheese sandwich. And so I say, social media can be really, really tough. These days now, I found that social media has become a more positive platform because of COVID, which is great, and people are singing and sharing recipes and dancing. My legacy I want to be is that not only was I an amazing event planner, but that I helped change the trajectory of social media to try to make it a more positive platform. Let's stop criticizing and start highlighting amazing people doing amazing things. So, how do you control that at large events? Not entirely sure, but hopefully we can create contests and create fun initiatives where attendees and guests at large events can view content and create content that could be complemented with some kind of a prize or an award. Change that whole concept of, instead of criticizing events, let's try to highlight the cool things that are happening there. And that's sort of my vision right now with social media.
Absolutely, and it's an amazing platform to build communities as well. So, like you say, using it for positive change. And
I think it's important. I'm not a Kardashian. I wish I had Kim Kardashian's checkbook, but I think driving positive change through social media and highlighting cool things that are going on, especially with events, is a great direction to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I just want to ask, do you think without the viral image of the cheese sandwich, do you think Fyre Festival might have made it?
Well, Holly, it would never have been the luxury festival that it was touted to be, but kids would have arrived. We had incredible tables made from reclaimed wood. We'd created cool little beach huts with old driftwood and palm fronds. We had an amazing stage that had been built for almost $2 million on the beach. The tents were there. They needed to be a little bit worked on. The first weekend may have been a little bit more bumpy, but you're there, you're a kid. You're in your bathing suit. You're eating grilled shrimp. You're listening to great music. You're drinking tequila and having a glass of rosé. You're enjoying one of the most beautiful islands in the world, in the Bahamas. So we were this close, really. And I think that flown in and just started to play on stage, that I think we would have been able to make it happen,
Pulled it together.
Yeah, absolutely. In some form of fashion. We were this close.
That brings me on to my next point about recovery. I mean, you are arguably a king of recovery, especially reputational recovery. After the documentary, you really used it as a platform to, broaden the sustainability movement and to lots of other brilliant causes. You also succeeded in the 2008 financial crash. You got through that. So what I wanted to ask you was, do you have any advice about how event planners can turn colossal negatives, such as what's going on at the moment with the COVID pandemic, into positives?
Well, this may sound a little bit weird, Holly, but it's one of the, I'm doing a big university, a virtual university tour now. It was supposed to be obviously in person, but with COVID. And I talk to the younger generation, and I want to inspire them to make better choices and better decisions. But I also am giving them a little bit of a kick. And I get on stage and I say, how would you like to be known as one of the biggest failures in pop culture today? Not so fun, or affiliated with one of the biggest failures. Because a lot of people say, Andy, like, it wasn't you, it was Billy. And I'm like, I know, but I tried, I stood by him and I tried to make Fyre a success. So I say to the younger generation, you know what? Get out there and take a risk. Get out there and try to make positive change. Find a startup. Don't align yourself with large companies that are destroying the world right now. Find smaller companies, minority-owned companies, women-run companies. Find companies that are trying to drive positive change within the social and the environmental impact arena. And get out there and take a risk. And you know what? Every once in a while, you're going to fail. And so I say to these kids, get out there and fail. Take the risk. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You might have to move back in with your parents. Well, half the kids I know are doing it anyway. And if my parents were still alive, I'd move in with them too. So I understand that. But at the end of the day, and it's still similar with the event industry. We're in crazy times right now. And I'm saying, utilize this time to really push your mind and think out of the box. And it's a time of opportunity. And we need to try to do a lot of different kinds of things to get through this crazy world of COVID. And so a lot of it is going to be taking a risk. And a lot of it, you might find we might fail every once in a while. But I think that you'll see a lot more successes than failures. And what would be let's see, what would be an example for the event world? Obviously reaching out to clients to talk to them about what are you doing right now from an event perspective. A lot of companies are still making tons of money, but they can't have large events. And bringing to them new ideas about virtual stuff that you can bring to them. And I think that there's just so much opportunity out there right now. For me to take that risk and to host that virtual music festival, we had over 3 million people tune in 3 days for my little music festival, which was phenomenal. And, the world is ripe to experience fun, and they want to experience culture, and they want to experience, live events again, but that's a little bit challenging. Though I saw recently I'm not sure where it was, but someone created almost like the drive-in movie theater concept, but they created all these small 10-foot by 10-foot small little, almost like a box at the Opera House, where there were like 200 of them all in a huge circle, and they were all 10 or 15 feet apart, so that people could still go and enjoy some amazing big event, but you were with your own family or with people that you're close with. I think there's a lot of things that we can be doing right now to be embracing the world of COVID. But for me, it's reshaping the entire event world. And you can be sure when I announce my next big music festival, as we're coming out of COVID, and I was working on something for 2021, which is now being moved to 2022, it's going to be zero waste. We're going to support local farmers. We're going to inspire young kids to make better decisions. We're going to work with brands that are making positive change. And I think this is the positive aspect that's coming out of COVID right now. Don't you agree, Holly?
I absolutely agree. There we have it. Take a risk, do something positive, and see how it goes.
Don't be afraid to fail.
And fail. Yeah, and be prepared.
Out there and fail. That's what I'm telling everybody. Don't be afraid to fail. Just don't, I don't want everybody losing lots of money, but try some new concepts. You know what? We've got to think out of the box right now.
I agree. Andy, that's all we've got time for. But what I'd love to do now is open up our session to our audience. They've been busy sending in questions as we've been speaking. So bear with us and we'll be back in 2 ticks.
I love it. Okay, cool. I'm standing by.
Okay, Andy, we have had so many brilliant questions from the audience, and I want to try and get through as many as we possibly can. So, okay, so Andy, we have had so many brilliant questions from the audience, so I want to try and get through as many as we can. So I think we should just go straight into it with the first question, if that's all right with you.
Ollie, let him rip. Let him
So,
rip.
the first one we have here is from Alison, and she wants to know, she says, Fyre Festival obviously had an impact on your career. Many people have had the career that they have taken years to build shattered due to the pandemic. What advice would you give them?
Oh boy. Now, who was asking that again?
This is from Alison.
Allison. Oh my gosh. Well, Allison, it's amazing. Right out of university for 10 years, I placed people in jobs, and predominantly sales and marketing managers and sales and marketing directors. And they would come to me and say, boy, I've been working at Coca-Cola for 10 years, and I'm looking for a new opportunity, and blah, 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 blah. But, no, I don't want to say this. And I'd say, what don't you want to say? I'd say, well, actually, I actually would love to do something different. Like what? I'd say, well, my husband and I have talked about opening a bed and breakfast. And I'm like, okay, Allison, do it. She'd say, what? I'd say, yeah, you know what? Follow your dreams and follow your heart. And we all know the event world is really, really stressful. And right now, even more so, obviously, with COVID and the reluctance of the world having big groups together, now is a great time to follow your dreams and chase them. And you know what? Find that house down in the Cotswolds that you started bed and breakfast. Find a greenhouse up in Devon that you can start a little farm. I mean, if there's ways of doing things, now's the time to do it. And so I feel like we don't need to use this time as a real negative. I think we keep it as a positive. And there's so many opportunities out there that you could chase. So I hope I've been helpful with that.
Oh, I think that's really lovely advice. And Alison, I hope that answers your question. So we've got another question here from Katia. And she says, Andy, how do you see sustainability in future events, given all the COVID regulations we have to deal with?
Oh, Katya. Well, my feeling, and has been for a while, that the event world is broken and it really needs change. And I think as we're coming out of COVID, hopefully sooner than later, that I want to see the event world turn to a place where all events should be as close to zero waste as possible. And I have this theme, which I love, and now you're all going to patent it, but the theme is without a trace. And my father was amazing because he had 9 children. And if he let us do whatever we wanted to do, we would destroy the house and we would make things horrible. And he said, you know what? Have as many friends over as you want. Have parties anytime. I don't care. The theme is without a trace. I don't want to know that anybody was ever here. That's the way it should be. And I think that's the way it's going to be and should be for the event world, which is let's have these large events. Let's not destroy the planet. Let's leave our places without a trace. And I think that's the future. And yes, we'll have to focus on social distancing. Yes, we need to focus on social and environmental impact issues. We want to inspire young people to make better choices. And we want to make our events really, really cool. But they've got to be climate friendly and social impact friendly too. And I think that's the positive that's going to be coming out of COVID. A lot of the restrictions, yes, are going to make it tough, but I think they're going to make our events safer and they're going to make them cooler. And we're going to see a lot of new things coming out of this. And I think the event world's going to explode in a good way as we develop this vaccine and come out of this.
Absolutely. Great advice again. And I think a lot of our audience will agree with you on that one. So Andy, we've got another question here from Alex this time. And he wants to know, have you heard from Billy?
Alex, oh my gosh. Well, funny you bring that up. Billy, what did he do? He tried to reach out to me. He began following me on Instagram 2 days ago. Because of course I got the announcement from our publicist that Billy is launching a podcast from prison. And that's happening within the next few weeks. And I think he's trying to clear his name and he's trying to Also explain all the things that he did wrong. And I think he wants to apologize to a lot of people. And it sounds as though he's going to use this podcast as a platform to do that. So that is the latest from Billy McFarland.
Wow, so you certainly have. Well, you're about to hear from him then.
I'm going to be on that podcast. I can't wait to get on it. We'll see what we say. But yeah,
I didn't even know you could do that from prison. But
oh my word, it's amazing what you can do today, right? Technology.
So, and we've got another question. This one's from Bronwyn, and Bronwyn says, "How have you rebuilt trust with contacts and suppliers?"
God, Bronwyn, it certainly is a challenge at times. The good news is that I've been in this business for 30 years, and anybody who's ever worked with me or for me knows that I was not responsible for the failure of Fyre Festival. They also will say, geez, Andy, what were you thinking? Where you felt like you could go and save a music festival on an island with no infrastructure in 6 weeks. So most people who know me know that they still trust me just as much as they did, 10 or 20 years ago. And for those who don't know me that well and think that I'm toxic potentially, you know what? I steer clear of them. And I know in my heart that they're probably not the people I need to surround myself with right now. So I think it's been more of a positive experience from that perspective.
Brilliant. Our next question comes from Kat, and she said, "It certainly seems that you have managed to make the most of the situation since the documentary was released. Do you regret being involved with Fyre Festival, or has it been a blessing in disguise for your career?"
Kat, oh my God, I love that name, Kat. That's very cool. So Kat, yes, obviously it wasn't my dream to be known as the blowjob king of the world at 59 years old and a 30-year career. No. But it has been a blessing in disguise because I've now, I think the people that know me in the industry say now, Andy, not only does the industry know you, but the world knows you. And it's time to utilize my platform, which I've been given, to hopefully make this world a better place in different ways. And my focus has been predominantly now will be with social media to make it more of a positive platform. And I want to be able to inspire younger generations like Gen Zs, Gen Xs, and millennials to make better choices and better decisions. And so, it's not easy. I need to watch myself every day. I can't say things that are, inappropriate. I need to always be doing the right thing, but that's what we all should be doing. So it's a blessing in disguise. I've got a platform now, and I'm excited to be able to really focus on driving positive change.
Well, you're certainly making the best out of a, let's say, difficult situation.
Thank you.
So our next question comes from Jody. Jody says, "How did you start out on your journey to be able to build up into such a large network of people?"
Wow, Jody. It's a good question. I catered my first wedding when I was 16 years old, and I have had the event, blood and world in my life forever. And so it's been a long time, and 30 years is a long time to be in this industry. I've met a lot of people, and I've been blessed to host events around the world. And so my network has continued to grow. One of my secrets is that I always tap into local communities for staffing wherever I host an event. And that's really a great sustainable thing to do. And by doing that, I develop contacts and friends all around the world that are in the event industry. So from Brisbane to Greece, to the Caribbean, to Russia, to Berlin, to the UK, you name it. I have a great following of people that I can call and say, wow, a client just rang and here's an event that's coming up. Are you in? And I'd love to work with you. So I've really been able to build a strong network by having the ability to tap into local networks all around the world wherever I host an event. And that, I think, is a good secret to follow.
There we go. Tap up the locals. Our next question comes from Elena, and Elena asks, did you maintain a relationship with the rest of the team involved with the Fyre Festival? If so, did they support you in raising the money?
Elena, good question. And yes, there's been a good sort of a group of us, maybe I'd say 6 or 8 of us that have stuck together. And they were all just as integral in raising money as I was. I obviously had the blessings of rising to fame pretty quickly with Fyre, giving me the ability to get out there more with my exposure, with being on television shows like Andy Cohen and Today shows and all the different kinds of programs that I was on to help promote raising the money. But the team worked really, really hard as well in any way that they could to kind of push these GoFundMes through. So go Team Fyre.
A collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Another question here from William. And William says, as an accountable manager, along with the creative director, what was it that blindsided you from the reality of the impending failure? Looking back, what would you have done differently in terms of your involvement in Fyre Festival?
William, really good question. Blindsided. Let's say one, I grew up going to the Bahamas. I grew up going to Exuma, that island, with my family as a young kid. And I was so excited to bring commerce and to bring tourism to the Exumas, which those islands down there struggle. I mean, such poverty and economic growth is really challenging. And there's only a handful of successful resorts. So I think my idealistic views on, hey, I can come in as a savior and bring incredible business to these little islands was probably one of the biggest factors in blindsiding me on not being realistic about trying to produce a music festival in 6 weeks. The pressure, I think, grew, exponentially every day when things just kept going wrong. And I was just determined to make it work. I was determined that this was going to be a success in every way. And as we all know in the event industry, shit happens and things go wrong every day. But none of the clients generally know about any of that. And when the curtain goes up and the event is a great success, you are golden. And I kept thinking that was going to be the case. I really did, and maybe I'm, smoking crack. No, I don't know what I'm doing.
Waiting for that magical moment to happen.
I was waiting, and I really felt in 30 years, it happened 99% of the time. So yeah, that's what pushed me through to keep going. And the blindsidedness, I think, was to not let the island down or any of the guests, the attendees down. And unfortunately, we all know the end of that story.
We do.
Fyre.
We've got another question here. Someone wants to know, was Fyre Festival insured?
Oh my word. That was something I spent days and days and days working on the insurance policy. Can you imagine trying to insure a music festival for thousands of kids with very little security and very little medical help on a small island in the Bahamas? Wonderful Lloyds of London, I'm telling you, they are the saviors of insuring these tricky to insure events, for sure. They were working tirelessly with me day and night to make sure that it was insured properly and that that part of the infrastructure was in place. So yes, it was.
Absolutely necessary. So then quite a lot of our audience want to know, Andy, whether you got to try the infamous cheese sandwich.
Oh my gosh, that effing cheese sandwich. Oh my word, my biggest nightmare. I ate a lot of those cheese sandwiches, and they were quite good. We had several of them every day, but often we added a little ham or a little turkey. Just happened to be that person only wanted to have cheese. And that, of course, as you know, is what brought the Fyre Festival down, the wonderful cheese sandwich.
The infamous cheese sandwich, the cheese toasty.
We now serve them at a lot of our events. We were doing that before COVID hit. The cheese sandwich became a very popular item at all the Indie King events. It's pretty cool.
Very memeable.
Oh my God, but boy, it was the best cheese sandwich you'd ever had. We made sure of that.
Andy, that brings us then to our last question. And this one has come in from Emily, who asks, out of all the memes that have been created of you, do you have a favorite?
No, Emily. Well, there are a lot of memes. As you all know and may have heard, I didn't know what a meme was. And my niece wrote to me and said, "Oh my gosh, Uncle Andy, you are the most popular trending meme right now in the world." And I said, "What is a meme?" And they're like, "Uncle Andy, it's not a meme, it's a meme." I said, "Oh gosh," they explained what it was. And of course, shortly after, my favorite meme came out, which was, "How do you want to pay? Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or Andy King?" Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Well, that was pretty clever. Oh yeah, we all know how I pay. Oh well.
We know people have got pretty creative with those memes as well.
They got very creative. Oh my, you want to get your daughter into UCLA? Call Andy King. Yeah. Oh, Andy King, 2020. I mean, I don't know how I'd do as president. Probably better than Donald Trump, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, on that note, let me say thank you so much, Andy, for joining us at the meeting show this year. And to our wonderful audience, thank you so much for your participation across the show and for your brilliant questions. That is all we've got time for. And now, of course, it's time for the virtual happy hour with entertainment from Sam McNeil at Soy from Song Division. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks for having me, everybody. Cheers. Good luck to all.